Three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tech Talks. I'm Victor here with Julie, and we do have a bit of a newer setup. I guess the camera is a bit slightly ajar now because we found a monitor.
So
Yeah,
things are slightly different from last time, I guess, if you're viewing the visual.
videos.
But
Yeah, but everything else is the same. So we're good with that. Um, Audio, we're still trying to get the mic in the right place with this new adjustment, but everything should be good. And today we're talking about WWDC, the Apple Developer Conference, where they laid out a roadmap for their different projects of their operating systems.
so software, not hardware.
It's software, yeah, based conference. And they did their keynote, which is generally what the public mostly watches, is shows all the plans that they are expecting to come out with throughout the year.
So updates and you said a new iOS as well, right? A whole new major update.
All the a major update for iOS, major update for iPad operating system. What is it? iPad OS.
iPad runs on something different from most Mac.
iPad, iPhone, and Mac have 3 different operating systems, and the Watch has a different operating.
Didn't know that.
They're using the same architecture except for the Mac, so that's pretty simple. Like they're pretty fluid between them. And we will be getting to the Mac's new architecture too.
Okay.
Oh, here it is. Okay. So, starting with iOS 14, this is what is the new update that's coming to iPhones. And I think they said September it's supposed to be released, but right now, if you have an iPhone, you could enter into the beta and test out a lot of these features. There's going to be more prevalence of on-device machine learning. This is something that they've been pushing over.
So like specific to you, like what your habits are and what you do?
It's more that because the way right now machine learning works is, let's say we have Google Assistant.
Mm-hmm.
When we speak to Google, it doesn't process it on the device. It sends it to the cloud and then processes it. It didn't even your language that you're speaking to it doesn't process on the machine. It processes on the cloud.
Didn't Google move so that some of that processing is on the phone?
They have, I don't know how, because Google's not really good at being upfront as to when these transitions
so that they had talked about it, but we don't.
Yeah, they have talked about it in the last year's developer conference when they announced Android or the Google Assistant 2.0. But only the Pixel 4 seems to have that.
Okay. So, and on Apple, you're saying that now it's more that your specific phone. Well,
Yeah.
So the advantage being that you don't have to be connected to the internet. But otherwise it functions the same?
Also, the other advantage is privacy. So they can say, like, your information doesn't even leave your phone, right? When it's searching for something via assistant like Siri, it does the machine learning processing on your phone to see to figure out what you said, but then it can use a different address to ask the question to Google or wherever it's getting its information from online, so that it's not being linked to your account per se. So it's a lot of having the processor be on the machine learning be on the phone means that there's less that's leaving your phone.
So I completely get that. That's not why I'm looking at you the way I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you because I don't get why it's called machine learning, because I thought machine learning was when the machine is like it's storing data based on what you're looking for and things, how it tries to respond, and then if you're like, well, no, that's not what I was looking for, and you have to go a different route, and so then the next time you try to ask the same kind of thing, that it picks up and makes a better choice to give you a better answer the next time.
Yes,
is what I thought machine learning
that
was.
is.
Okay, but it sounds like this is just the assistant either being able to access.
The assistant is machine learning. That is why.
But it's like, okay, so machine learning sounds like the process of the learning of the, like, it getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
So
and being able to have that built into your phone, the AI and the machine learning all processed.
And so then like it stores on your phone, and just like then intermittently when you're connected to the internet, it sends it, or it can, or if you need to.
It will. The machine learning will probably sync its algorithms, whatever algorithms it has, to probably a cloud one, I imagine. I'm not sure as to how they set that one part up. The other part is when you're connected to the internet and you ask a question that requires the internet, it will then be able to get the data that it needs from the phone and only ask for specific data from the internet instead of everything that you asked your phone.
I am hopeful and trusting that it's gonna be good. I guess I just don't understand why it's called what it is.
The machine learning or the AI?
I understand why machine learning is called machine learning, but I feel like just like calling what the change has been, like to on device machine learning. I don't know. It just, for some reason, it's like, it doesn't seem like the name matches up with what the description of it is. Like I understand both concepts, but I don't know why for some reason it seems just.
The second part is widgets. Now on iOS 14, and this is something that if you had Android, you know more about what a widget is. But it's essentially like a mini parts of an app that have like a GUI, a graphical user interface, right on the home screen of your device. So the best example would be like a clock face, right? A clock face would be a GUI, graphical user interface of the clock app that's on the phone.
So, but it doesn't have to be just on the home screen. It can be any of the sheets or pages that you have, right?
Yeah, home screen is all those pages are.
I thought home was one. This was like one.
The homes, there is the main page. It's very funky depending on what system you're talking about. When Apple is talking about the home screen, they're just talking about the whole home screen, which is all the pages that it includes. There is like the front page or the very first page that is also considered the home page. But there is kind of a multi-level there. There's the home screen and home page, I guess, would be the way to separate them out.
So the point, though, is that you can have widgets on not just one of those pages,
yes,
but that you can move the widgets around onto different pages. It can be on the main one, it can be on subsidiary ones. You could, sort your pages, of course, by what apps are on there. And then the widgets, though, there was the comment that you can't center a 2-block widget, that one that would usually take up the width of 2 apps. You can't have one app on each side with that 2-width widget in the center. It has to be either left or right.
According to the way Apple has it set up, it has to be either left or right. That's just how they want it. And usually a screen, everybody at this point listening to this probably understands that a phone screen can hold 4 apps width-wise, and you would have to put it on either one side or the other.
The stacking widgets looks really
neat.
The
second part to that is they did update it from the Android version a bit by stacking widgets.
It's called a carousel widget, right? It's one particular way that Apple has made it so you can interact with and use widgets. Is that right?
So they have a pre-built stacked widgets, which goes through a set of widgets, and then you can turn off and on certain widgets that you want. And you can set it so that it switches throughout the day, or you can let the AI take over to predict which widget that you want. And while it's on the screen, you can kind of flip through the widgets as well. There also is, you can create your own stacks. So if you have a 4x4 widget or 2x2 widget, and
couldn't you make it any size, or is it limited?
You
by
cannot
size?
resize the widgets on Apple.
Oh, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, they are preset, and so if you have a 2x2 widget and you have another 2x2 widget, you can put that one widget on top of the other and create a stack automatically.
But you couldn't. So if you have a 2x4 widget, you couldn't put a 2x2 and a 2x2 on top of the 2x4.
I don't know. I don't believe so. I haven't seen any videos of that.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, even just the ability to stack widgets seems pretty nice. I'm glad that Apple's getting it. I hadn't realized that Apple didn't have widgets. Honestly, I underutilize the ones I do, but I think having them be stackable is really nice.
Yeah, it's a nice little... It's like one of those things where Apple takes something and just makes it better with with just like a slight tweak that once you think of it, you're like, oh, of course, obviously that would be smart, but it never even occurred to anybody before, probably. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there, but obviously nobody at Google. The app library to hide pages. So now, also, one thing that Apple didn't have was an app library. We have this luxury of when we have apps, we can go and pull up a list of all the apps.
By we, you mean Android, right? All Android users?
We specifically, as
yes,
us.
we.
And then, yes, Android users can pull up from the bottom and get a list of all their apps in alphabetical order. On iPhone, it was that when you installed an app, it would be added to your home screen, and your entire home screen was just your library of apps.
That's insane. I did not realize that that was the case with Apple.
And so the biggest organization improvement to Apple was when they finally added folders so that people could put all their useless apps into a single folder at the last page that they didn't want to get rid of, but they also didn't want just clogging up their screens. So that was the way they would have to organize it. Now they have an app library, so if they swipe past their last page, it brings up the library. Instead of from us, it's from the pulling up from the bottom. From them, they just go to the last page and swipe over, and they have all their apps there. And they do have the apps first categorized, which is kind of cool. And then you can from there switch it to an alphabetical list if you wanted to. That's searchable. So great improvement for Apple, because I imagine that would be quite a headache to deal with. And on top of that, now, because you're able to do that, they have it set so that you can turn off pages.
Or hide pages.
Yeah, hide pages so that you don't have them filling up your screen to flick through all the time.
So to hide some of the pages, it was you hold with a finger on the screen until it jiggles, and then you can check or uncheck to add them.
Yeah, at the bottom there's going to be the page kind of menu, or the different page buttons, and then when you click that, you'll have this menu of pages that you can turn off and on. Really good feature. Again, a lot of this is quality of life. A lot of people are saying like it's just them taking all the Google stuff and finally adding it in. Siri interface is also similar to the Google version of what they did with the Assistant. They minimized it to just the bottom of the screen instead of taking up the whole screen, and then the answer comes in a notification at the top.
That makes a lot of sense because it doesn't need to take over the whole screen. But
as MKBHD calls out, though, that it is kind of a pseudo half screen because you can't interact with the screen behind it. It is still taking up the full front of the screen. It's just transparent so that you can see what's behind what's going. So if you need to reference, let's say you're on an article and then you want to ask something,
you're trying to like ask it to look up a word or something. You can still at least see the spelling of the word or whatever it is.
Now they also are adding in a translate app, which
Google's got those earbuds that
Google has a built-in translate app. Microsoft has a translate app. There's so many translate apps, and I'm pretty sure some of these are even on Apple phone. If you get the app, you can probably download the Google Translate app for Apple, and same thing with it. But now Apple has its own translate. Messages are getting quite the upgrade. The Messages apps are getting pinned conversations, so that if you have a particular conversation, let's say you talk to a lot of people, but you want a group of people that are always at the top of your Messages app, you can pin them to the top.
It's like...
Group messages are being overhauled or updated, where you can have inline replies. So this is very similar to how Facebook has it, where when you type to somebody, you can reply to specifically that person, or you can reply to the thread as a whole if you wanted. And then replying to that specifically that person, it comes out as kind of like a little side thread.
Something else with the groups. Oh, they said you can make it so that you only get notifications if you're mentioned in the.
Yeah.
It seems like they're kind of bringing they're almost like they're bringing email style conversation for groups into.
Email style, or like
you said, Facebook. I know.
Yeah, social style. But yeah, messages or mentions was the other part, where you can @ somebody, and then that way you're talking specifically to them, and you can set it so that you only get notifications on if you are mentioned, if you are added at.
Interesting.
The maps also getting quite the update with guides for recommendations. So Google also has like this kind of Google Guides system within the Maps app, and that just basically is a bunch of people that review things to kind of get a review score on the different businesses. But
I didn't know that Apple had a Maps app. I know that sounds really, really naive. I just kind of assumed they use Google, and that makes so much sense.
They did use Google for a long time, and then they eventually decided to make their own. But yeah, their app was kind of a pseudo layered over Google Maps. But now they decided to make their own map, and they decided to...
Maps are fascinating. The copyright and the history behind maps, and how the history of people would put their names in it. It is interesting when you think about an app or a company like Apple, and how much work it actually is to have maps that are accurate and up to date. And Google, really, from my perspective, everything I know about it, is the world's leader in map updating and having. But just when you think about the history about how people who made maps, because it was so intensive to have to travel around and keep these things, they'd put fake towns on their maps so that they could tell when someone copyrighted their maps. And now it's interesting in modern context to think of Apple, because I'm sure that there are companies who would just take from Google, because they do already obviously have these big maps. But the idea of having to start all over and overhaul and make your own map, it's just the idea that Apple has one is kind of mind-boggling. But then it also makes me really question, to what degree are they just stealing their information from someone else's work, and they're just like taking it.
I mean, I'm sure they're
Right.
paying whoever the map maker is to.
Yeah, but who the map maker?
Yeah.
Like they're probably still taking information data from like Google and other sources, because like Google actually has cars that go around
Yeah.
and like all these things, and it's like, thank you Google. Like this is not meant to like be turned into a thank you Google thing, but it's one of those things that like when I look at Apple, obviously I'm not an Apple person. They're not my first preference. That's not to say that they're not valuable or the best choice for some people. They certainly have an area, but it just, so much of Apple, their ecosystem and their luxury facade, and then like the fact though that they're like, it's, I mean, it is of course to make money in the end, and then it just doesn't always seem like they're as much about making the customer's experience good and like really creating new things to help people as much as it is like for their bottom line, for the money, which obviously every company is that way. And I know I'm on a really tangent. Stop, get off the soapbox, but it's just, all right, let's talk more Apple.
They are adding cycling directions, which will take advantage of streets that have bike lanes and bike paths, be able to get to where you want. And it also takes into account elevation when you are riding around. It'll let you know if you're going to be going up hills, if it's going to be relatively flat. And it will be notice if the roads are going to be busy, that if you're going to be on a bike lane in a busy road, it'll give you like the 3 options like maps do, like, hey, this, you can see which ones are less busy. Stairs, it will notify if like, hey, you're going to have to be taking stairs, and you can try to avoid taking stairs.
Those are, I will say, those are really nice features to have in a Maps app. I'm pleased about that, and that's right after I was sitting here like with all my comments about like like, again, there are things about Apple and every company that are okay, but I think it's like that facade of a luxury brand, and like how they price things so high and like make it such an exclusive thing. It feels disingenuous compared to companies that try to be more accessible. And again, I recognize that there's a place for and a need for that in the market, because of course you need money to fund advancements, and Apple does make a lot of advancements. A lot of areas. What are you?
I'm just checking. So Google Maps, I did know that Google Maps did have a cycling app. I do not know, it doesn't make it very clear as to if it's prioritizing bike routes or anything like that. It just gives your generic line to where you need to go.
Here's my hope with what it sounds like Apple's doing. If they're really taking the maps and they're like making a new, better product, that's great. Oh, you can't hear.
You can't see.
Oh, well, that doesn't matter. If we are making a new, better product, that's great, and like I would fully support Apple making a better product, or as far as like making new uses for it. And I have noticed, obviously, Google has some roads that are not correct. We just found that out a couple weeks ago in Oakland. And so maybe if Apple can add to it, it would. Sometimes it's frustrating that there's not more collaboratives.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the Google Map one, and they do tend to prioritize different roads than the driving one, and it does seem like they are willing to go off the roads. But again, it doesn't make it very clear as to whether it's prioritizing bike paths or anything like that, or bike roads.
And it does say at the bottom, mostly flat.
Yeah.
But it doesn't give any details. So I'm curious to what degree Apple gives details and like what the comparison that way is.
And So that's the map update. Oh, there's one other thing or two things technically. There's the EV routing, which is electric vehicle routing. So if you have an electric vehicle that you're going on a trip, you can tell the app what type of electric vehicle you have, and then it can make the plans based off of when there's going to be a electric vehicle charger on the route along the route, so that you can you can make sure that you're going to have an electric vehicle charger on your route wherever you go. Super useful, especially right now, as electric vehicle chargers are not everywhere yet, even in California, but there are enough places where you could make the trip.
But it would definitely be helpful to know where you can stop to get some charge.
Then they also had this extra update, and this is specifically for China, but I thought it was interesting. So I don't know much about China's driving infrastructure, but they said that you could save your license plate in the app. And sorry about that. We had the computer crash, which is quite unfortunate. But we're back, and then I will just edit this together so that it's one podcast.
Oh, where's my...
You okay?
Yeah, I forgot my heating pad.
Oh, okay.
And I don't remember what we were talking about, but I think you were
the China. China had the license plate allows them to go into congested areas. You can save your license plate in the app.
Yes. All right. Yeah. That sounds good for them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, or even if I was saying that correctly as to what was the real situation with that, but
it's fine. I don't need to be in the video. Go on.
You do need to be in the
Go
video.
On.
Next up is digital keys. So Apple is using the NFC to be able to unlock cars and use it as a key for your car so that you can start the car. And that's pretty cool. That's going to be starting in the new BMW. But I imagine cars are going to be starting to roll out with this technology, and even Android is going to be able to hop on this pretty easily.
So that does seem pretty convenient, except that my phone dies all the time. I forget my phone all the time. I don't always bring it with me. I don't want to bring it with me. And so I think it would still be really important to still have a physical key.
I mean, they'll still have physical keys. It's not going to be only your phone. Like, yeah, it's not like you're going to be going into a BMW and they'll just give you a car with no keys. And
so, but what happens if your phone does die? Then are you just like, you have to get a charger, or...
If your phone does die and you don't have your keys, then you will need to...
You're without a key, like you literally are kind of stranded unless you have a charger.
But that's pretty rare occurrence nowadays. Like, a lot of people get phones based off of whether it will last them throughout the day, and if the phone's not lasting you throughout the day, it's probably time to replace the battery or update to a new phone that will last you throughout the day.
On one hand, yes, I understand and agree, and on the other hand, I think a lot of people can't just necessarily update or upgrade their phone when they want to, or just because the battery's not lasting.
If they have one of those phones that...
If they can afford the car and all that at this point, yes, I agree. You're probably right about that.
And the other part is, like, if they don't have a phone that if they're not able to switch out phones as readily as, like, some people like us, where if we wanted to, we could switch out a phone.
Well,
what was it? Then they probably have a phone that doesn't take up a lot of battery consumption anyways. It probably doesn't have all the features that is processing all the battery consumption. They might not even have NFC.
I think you're making assumptions. Let's move on.
The other part to it is you can share keys with other people. and you can set profiles to the keys so that if you were sharing it to, let's say, a valet, you could that way you could restrict the profile to be only, I don't know if you could set to how fast they can go or whatever.
Like so that they can't see what your home address is.
Yeah, and
on your Maps app or whatever. Yeah, that would be good and necessary.
And also limited time sharing too probably is where when
you so they can't use their phone
anytime you want.
Interesting. I mean, there's definitely advantages to this, and like having that option obviously better than not having the option. I just don't see it replacing keys anytime soon.
No, it's not going to replace anytime soon. In the future, it will one day. You will not.
I think, honestly, and this is like kind of beside the point, but I think we are more likely to have a simple chip implant that does something like unlocking, that can be programmed to unlock your house or keys and things like that before we get so that it's regularly on your phone. Because there are too many of us who lose our phones, and I don't know. We'll just see.
Losing the phones. Well, that's where you go into just getting the bionic chip implanted into your hand.
That's literally what I just said.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't hear that part. I was busy adjusting this.
I don't know why.
Because you're not. You're
I'm
like
in
at
the picture. All right. We're good. Next one.
The app clips, another feature that
go on.
Yeah, another feature that Google has had, but Apple is just started getting in. These are segments of an app that you can utilize without downloading the app.
I didn't know that Google had this, so I was really excited when I heard about it because, for example, if you order something from the internet, there are all these different shipping apps, and so to see where your package is, all the emails have a different app it seems like they want you to download. And so having this ability to use the app without having to download it, I am excited about that.
Yeah, essentially the mechanics behind it, as I understand it, is the segments of the app have a web page that they're associated with. And so instead of downloading the app, you can just open up that web page and it works exactly like the app, but it's not actually being downloaded to your phone. And really cool for things like reward points or things like that you don't want the app, but you do, let's say, participate in Starbucks rewards and whatnot.
I don't know if that would work though, because wouldn't you have to be signed in? And so wouldn't, in that case, like for a reward program, wouldn't it need to be docked on?
What you would do is, like, if they have the like in Apple, they had like a little thing that you would scan. It was a scanner. Apple has its own QR scanner now that you would scan to open up the app. And then you, like, right now, you're logged into all sorts of things without the app.
So what you mean, though, is, like, saved passwords in a website. But wait, what were you talking about QR scanners? I'm confused about that.
To get to the app segment, you scan the QR segment, the QR code for that segment. Apple, you remember the QR code, right?
Like, I know what a QR code and a scanner for that is, yes.
Yeah, and then you just scan it and bam, it's up on your phone and you're there.
So it'll take you to the web page, you mean, more or less.
Yeah.
And then it'll, like, log it on an account because of a saved password. So it's just not having the app. Okay, now I got
it. And then Apple has designed its new QR code.
So you said that Google has even that part where for like just rewards programs for like Panera and stuff, you can actually delete the app now and we can just use, because I hate these reward programs. I really do.
I had to see, because it's based off of the company more than it does. Like Google has the functionality. Now, it depends as to the company. I use Starbucks because I imagine that they utilize these functionalities, but I don't know. I don't utilize a lot of these functionalities.
Yeah,
but it's based off of the company. So if the company has designed an app and has set up their app segment to do this, then it will work.
I know
But-
this is like dreaming, but wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if all of the companies and like your phone and it could all work together seamlessly to do the rewards, and or do it so with the data where you own your data, and so you at least get paid for the inconvenience or something. I don't know.
Google Wallet is also taking that to another level where it saves your membership cards.
That's
right?
nice. I didn't know that. How does? You'll have to show me about that. I didn't know that. Google membership. Google what?
Google Wallet.
Google Wallet. And Google Wallet is still different from Google Send and Google Pay.
No.
See, that whole thing confuses me
they
too.
They fused all of those together.
It drives me really crazy because the one that I primarily use on my phone, every time I open it, it's basically like, well, are you sure you want to use this app? We're basically going to do it through our other app anyways. And it's like, well, then why don't you just like...
You should just uninstall that app.
Because I forget what the other one's called, and so then it takes me a long time to remember.
It is now officially Google Pay.
But see, that's the problem. G is under Google, and I cannot get used to that. You have to tell me if I'm actually gonna find that one.
Yeah, that is one problem I'd say with Google is their system of
naming
is not consistent, right? Like they have messages, which is their default messages app, but there's no way to distinguish that from messages on Samsung. So when you say the messages app, Samsung has two different messages app called messages, but different icons instead of just Google messages, right? Like, I think the
app naming is problematic. And so like, Android does have that, the library with the alphabetical, still better than Apple's mess that they used to have.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, for memory and the naming, it was kind of challenging.
I think Google should just bite the bullet and just name their stuff Google Messages. Like, I get that it's not like it's not as nice as just messages having.
But if at least it was all consistent, and then you knew I want a Google, what I'm looking for is a Google-based app. So you first go to the alphabetical G and then alphabetical within that. Yeah. But having some that start with the word Google and some don't is such a nightmare right now.
Fit, which is Google Fit. You have Gmail, which is Google Gmail, but Gmail, I guess, is they created a brand there, but they didn't call it GFit or GPay.
Yeah, like
something like that.
If they stuck with the GPay or the G, like sort of like the I, this, that, the other thing.
Yeah, it
would have made sense. No one cares that it's like following the model. I mean, honestly, it would just make it easier for the rest of us.
Yeah, because with trying to just be flat messages, like everybody else is trying to be, it's hard to distinguish. Like, we can distinguish because we don't have Samsung, so we don't have that problem.
Yeah.
Next up is also the app clips will be integrated with Apple Pay. This is going to your question here. Apple Pay and Apple Sign In, so that so that when you're using an app clip, it'll just use Apple Sign In to sign into whatever thing that you want to sign into, so that you don't have to, like, the login thing is already being dealt with.
Okay.
Next up is iPad OS 14.
Is that what you mentioned at the beginning?
No, we called iOS 14.
And they're all on 14? I thought that it was like 11.
They are now all on 14, probably because they probably ran some ahead so that they could have this consistent flow. Because also we will find out that Mac OS,
it's called 14.
Mac OS 14. It's called Big Sur, but I think it's Mac OS. No, I think it might be actually Mac OS 11.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I thought they called one of them 11.
Mac OS 11 is, I think it's actually Mac OS 11. But the Apple Watch, or iPhone and iOS, or iPad are on both 14. So, They now are on iPad, essentially adding sidebars to a lot of their user interfaces. So if you
and go on.
so in the Photos app, there is going to be a sidebar menu so that you can search through. It makes it look like any file app that you've kind of seen before, or almost every app on that you've seen before that has that side to filter through a menu button.
Sorry, the cat keeps asking to come up, but she won't jump. She really wants me to pick her up. Okay, go
on. So the Photos is getting a sidebar menu. They're getting compact calls notifications so that it doesn't take up the full screen, very similar to the Siri. They're getting the compact search and compact improvements for Siri, like iOS 14 had the improvements. And then they come to the Apple Pencil. So they have Apple Pencil app, which is really cool. It's just drawing. It's having a notepad, essentially. But then they take it to the next level with this Scribble app.
Well, it's more than an app, I think you said, right?
Well, it's an app, but it runs in the background of the iPad. And the Scribble app it takes handwriting to text. So if you are and you can utilize this anywhere on the iPad. So if you're searching for a web page, you can write www dot whatever, and it will translate that to text and then fill in the field with that text.
This is okay. I'm very excited about this, but I also have a lot of questions of curiosity for this. As a school-based occupational therapist, a lot of people think about what we do as largely being related to handwriting legibility. And people do have significant differences in their handwriting, and I'm interested to what extent or degree it's able to decipher handwriting to translate it into text. And I'm personally really interested in the programming behind it, and using that for being able to score assessment around handwriting. I think it could save a whole lot of time with not only assessments, but also honestly with progress notes, not having to look at every, and it would be a more objective way of doing it. I also have questions around so when you're writing, I'm assuming you have to hold your hand in the air so you're not actually stabilizing, right? Because you can't rest your.
You can rest your hand.
It does. It will register just the.
Yeah, they have the technology to. I think the way they do it is if it reads the tip of the pen as being near the iPad, it will then ignore other touches or other senses.
Wait, I have a question about that. You said the pen. So does the iPad come with a pen now? Like
it doesn't come with the pen. You have to buy the pen.
Okay, but so you're saying Apple specific stylus the iPad detects, but other styluses it wouldn't, or how?
So there is two main technologies to styluses. So you don't necessarily need Apple's branded one, although it probably would work better because it's designed for it probably has chips and stuff that are designed for it, the iPad experience.
I don't know. You really think the pen has a chip? You think the stylus does?
Yeah, they have electric. There's two different versions of styluses. There is a passive stylus that doesn't use chips and technology, and then there is a active where it creates an electrical current. And it does do a lot. It does a lot of things.
That makes sense. Is that what Samsung uses with their?
Samsung uses a passive. For the Note and things like that. And by passive, the pen still uses electricity. Especially in the newer models, but they're.
You mean it's just like a conductive material? Like, what do you mean?
No, the pen actually uses electricity to send signal to the iPad, to send
I'm interested in knowing more about that, but we don't have to have it on
Right now,
today's
yeah.
topic.
We can do a
Okay.
topic on the two main technologies of pen use because
Stylus
the
use, right?
styluses,
Okay.
yeah, because I looked this up before with the Windows Surface had their first Surface was one style of it, and then they switched over to the other technology instead, and that they had their reasons for it, and that there's pros and cons to both of them. So, yeah, we can go over that in one of the few upcoming Tech Talks. Anyways, Scribble, handwriting to text. It's cross app. You can use it in your Notes app. You can use it in your Tasks app. You can use it in the web browser. Really great, like if for people that do like writing down and utilizing that instead of just typing all the time. It also is able to take notes that were handwritten and turn them into text after the fact. It also is able to define perfect shapes. So if you, let's say you draw, the example that they had was a pentagon that they drew. And then if you hold it there, instead of it using the trace that you made, it will realize that you tried to draw a pentagon and then just draw a perfect pentagon for you. Same thing with the straight lines. You could do it with straight lines if you wanted to do it that way.
That'll be really, really handy. Again, I do have curiosities around the accuracy, and I would love to see the background behind that and see it applied for more things. Yeah. Oof. All right, there we go. Bye. Okay. Sorry.
Next up is you're able to change the default browser and mail app now in iPhone and iPad. Really nice feature for people that don't want to use Safari and the Apple Mail app, which I have used it before. I've helped customers with their mail app. That thing is straight up garbage.
I just can't believe it took them until 2020 to do this. Like, Apple is so stubborn and they so want people trapped in their ecosystem, it seems. I don't know why else they would have been this withholding on a clearly better product. Like,
yeah, Safari, they still claim Safari is so good and all that,
my.
but I've not liked Safari, and their mail app is not a good app. So now you can have Gmail or Outlook or whatever you might use as your mail app, and forget about that. And you could use Chrome or Edge as your default browsing app. AirPods. This is some new AirPod stuff. The automatic switching, so it's able to sense whether you put down different like if you have your phone that you're using your iPods on, but then you put it down to pick up your iPad, but then you get a phone call, it will switch dynamically to whatever activity that you are using. The other one is surround sound and motion tracking. So this was really cool. The idea of they're trying to make surround sound, and they're using the gyroscope and accelerometer in the headphones to see if you turn your head, so that way when you're, let's say the sound that they're trying to do, let's say it's a band and you hear the music coming from there, and then when you turn your head, the band doesn't turn with you. When you turn your head, then now the band starts listening from the side. I thought that's really cool technology to be able to utilize that to adjust where the sound's coming from, so that it feels like you are in a 3D space. The 3D space is not around you.
I think for certain things, for movies, that would be really great.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could potentially be confusing for the automatic calculations the brain makes at first, but I mean, because at this point, our ears and our brains are primarily used to processing the auditory information headphones as the way we have. But yeah, in the long term, I think that's a really cool addition to headphones, especially for movies.
And also like just switching between the two, if you're on your Mac versus you're on your iPhone versus you're on your iPad, and dynamically switching to it without having to constantly like reconnect them.
I think that some people will be more excited about that than I am. I tend to not want the auditory to switch. I do shift my visual attention a lot, but I'd be really annoyed if my headphones switched all the time with that, I think, personally, because I would rather have the headphones stick to the one consistent thing I'm focusing on, and then if I want to change the sound, I would manually do it. So other people maybe will be excited about it.
Let's see. Did that. All right. Apple Watch. They are now making it so that they're what they're calling compilations, which is allowing you to compile a watch face together. It's almost like building a watch face, but a little bit more restricted. You're not like coding a watch face. You're just taking bits from other apps and then creating a watch face. Now you're allowed to use multiple parts from different apps. I guess before you were only able to use one single widget from one app
at a time.
And so now you can kind of build a watch face custom to the apps that you're interested in seeing from regularly. They made those shareable, so you can, if you once you have a watch face that you like, and then somebody else is like, wow, that's like, I like it, you can share that, or you can share it to social media and whatnot. Cycling cycling is now added into the watch face so that you can do it. They have a dance workout in the Fit app that they have on the watch, so it uses the gyroscopes and stuff to try to see if you are dancing and see how much you have burned calories wise. Sleep tracking is now in the Apple Watch, and they will have a wind down routine set up. There is a screen sleep mode where with the wind down, instead of the watch being the watch face, they make it so that it's dark and you just see like a kind of a faint clock on there, very much like a lot of phones do nowadays. So if you take all of the if you hide the proximity sensor from the light to see what it says, it will kind of turn off the phone. Sometimes it'll just be like just the clock face on there, and that's what they're doing with the watch too. And they will this also works on their phone. They have a vibrate alarm, which I personally think is fantastic. Ever since I read Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, and Sam Fisher had on his little watch a way to wake him up with like a little vibrate, I was like, that is genius.
I do think that having watches that are able to tell us about like sleep tracking and the vibrate to wake up, it seems like a really cool advancement. And yeah, I think that there's definitely a market for it. My concern is that the transverse carpal tunnel, the ligament that crosses at your wrist, that you have all your tendons and your vessels going under, a lot of people end up with carpal tunnel syndrome, not only from repetitive movement, but they wear their watches on their wrist too tight. Your wristwatch should not be firmly against your skin. That's like it should have room to move some. And this trend of wearing wearing your watch through the night, from a professional perspective, I don't know that that's the best choice for the health of your wrist, like your hand, the soft tissues that are, I mean, perhaps maybe if you do like tendon gliding exercises right before you go to bed, if you're going to be wearing your watch overnight. But I don't think personally I would want to wear a watch to bed every night. I don't think that it would be ideal for for your wrists, especially if the person is wearing it tight against their skin, which I'm curious how well the tracking of like the health components, like your sleep, and then how those things work, if it, like how tight they expect or it needs to be for those to be accurate.
Like it needs to be that tight because it uses lights.
Well, you say that tight, but I'm curious, because I haven't experienced firsthand, so that's, I guess that's my commentary on that. I don't really know firsthand.
Yeah,
Especially though, here's the problem. Okay, so that in my mind too. So like the things I mentioned, but definitely it would be problematic for a person like me who tends to sleep on top of their arms. Right? Like if you sleep with your arms already under you and you're adding even more compression from like a wristwatch, that definitely doesn't seem. But
well, there you have it from an occupational therapist as to whether, if you're sleeping with your watch, pay attention to things.
Try to sleep. Obviously, always try to sleep on your back. But anyways. No, I say always, Edward. That's overgeneralizing. There are definitely people who have different positioning needs, but in general, most people.
Then they also talked about having a hand washing coach built into the watch, so that it will use the microphone to kind of, and the accelerometer gyroscope to kind of sense if you are washing your hands, and then it has like a little screen pop up.
The sound of water has been detected, yeah. Or something.
And then it'll try to make sure that you rinse for the full duration that it has. And
that seems weird to me.
It is a little weird. It's it's funny. It's kind of the signs of the times. Now, what I'm interested in is how long is that going to stay on the watch?
Right. Like, is it always going to be there?
And or, how many years from now is
when
it
you're
like,
rinsing your paintbrush, is it going to be like, you're not done washing your hands? And you're like, I'm not washing my hands. I'm rinsing a spoon, or, and it's like, come on, you've got to keep going. Like, I don't know. It seems like Apple has all these things, like they want to be your parent more than they want to be your tech provider from a lot of the things Apple does.
Privacy. So data minimization. This is just like kind of general privacy concerns that they used a lot of catchwords to kind of show that, yeah, we are interested in private in your privacy. So they used data minimization, on-device intelligence, converting old accounts to sign in with Apple. So this is what I'm curious on. When they mean old accounts to sign in with Apple, do they mean like you could take a Google account and then sign up for the sign in with Apple to do that? Because that would be kind of cool. It's very much like Outlook did, where you can just sign up for Outlook with any email address.
Oh.
And then if you do the sign in with Apple using any email address, I think that would be a really nice thing.
That would be, because that would relieve the problem of, oh, you forgot your Apple password. You're never getting any of your stuff back from that Apple account or accessing it ever again. Like I have had an Apple device before, like one, maybe two. But that was the problem. Like the device becomes literally useless if you can't remember your password. And when you have a memory, it doesn't matter if you write it down somewhere, like, right? And then when you find the password, you've lost the device, and then so forth. And it just, I really honestly have hated Apple's login, like, because it seems like they're trying to keep you from your own stuff. Again, it seems like they want to be not just a parent, but they're just very, like, authoritarian seeming about their stuff. I don't know. I'm not a big Apple fan.
Setting apps to approximate location versus precise location, which I think Google should steal this, is when an app asks for your location, you can tell it just approximate location within like a few blocks instead of the precise GPS location that it can give if it wanted to, which I thought that was a really cool feature. And then developer privacy, that they policy in the App Store, and they kind of lay it out, and they literally use an example of nutrition facts, right? Like on food, you have nutrition facts as to, how much your calories you're consuming, things like that. And their app store, when you are looking at an app, it will say right there in the screen or in the app page what data or what information it's going to ask from you, whether it needs your contacts, whether it needs your location services, whether all the different things before you even download the app. It'll say right there the different permissions it's going to ask for.
Okay.
Then they went on to the home, the Apple Home. And they said that they are partnering with Amazon and Google to set device standards for home equipment. I don't know exactly what that means. They didn't go in elaborate detail on there, but I imagine that a lot of devices are going to be able to be built so that either Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa are all able to be used on one device, and you can kind of pick and choose which profile you would rather have, so that you don't have manufacturers creating just for one particular.
I think that's necessary. I'm glad that it sounds like that's what they're doing, and I hope it is, because if they're not doing it themselves, then I think we would need the government or someone. There needs to be some form of regulation, whether it's a third-party board or whatever. Because, especially as these devices are getting more and more integrated, not only into our lives, but our homes, if one company has a monopoly over your whole home, every device in your home is from that one company, and or you're like having to stick to that ecosystem, that would be very, very frustrating. And then what if something happened where you're no longer pleased with that company? You'd have to switch everything.
To switch your cameras, you have to switch your...
Diversity makes sense. Diversity is great.
Yeah, I think that is...
Diversity in options, I should say, but that standard of interchanging so you can have diversity in the system.
Because right now, if we decided to go to Apple, we have 4 Google Homes, and Google Home just gives those things out, literally, the Google Nest stuff. And we have the Google Nest Home, and we have the Chromecast. Chromecast, at least Apple I think is able to utilize Chromecast.
Okay.
But like all the other Google stuff would be less useful. Like you could still use it, we'd still have Gmail accounts, but it like our phones and things like that, it's just not as nice of a connection. They talked about adaptive lighting. That is setting. I actually can't remember too much about what.
Do they mean lighting. Like instead of black with white, they can do like black with yellow, or like?
Yeah, it's switching out so that they can take out the blue over time in lights and things.
Already a thing.
It is a thing, but they're adding it to the Apple Home ecosystem too, like.
Again, I thought it was, but that's, obviously reducing the blue light.
This is at the home, not in the phone.
Oh, right. You said the home product. So like the home hub system thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So like if you have smart lights and you can adjust it so
the lights in your. Oh, so they mean environmental light changes, not just like on the screen of your home hub. Oh, because the light bulbs I've seen where they have the light bulbs that are like different colors. And this I like, actually, now that I understand what you're saying. This is really good because, I know, like okay, as an OT, again, part of my job in schools means adapting and accommodating students who have differences, including sensory processing differences. Everyone has differences in the way that we process our sensory information. If right now we're talking about lighting, so we're talking about what's perceived by the eyes. Visual perception, visual processing, sensory modulation, to be able to use that incoming information to be able to process, understand it, and then make adjustments. The biggest problem with lighting, not only being able to see, is that so many people are so sensitive to certain kinds of light. So like in the classrooms, one thing we have done is like I have these green light filters that magnetically stick to the tile runners in the ceiling, and so I have to have these like flame retardant stupid like I'm sorry, I don't mean to call them stupid, They're stupid because it's $35 for 6 of them. And there's so many lights in a single classroom. It's over $100 to fix the lighting in a classroom because of the common lighting that is in most schools. But the reality is individuals are different. Some kids are so, the light is processed as noxious. It can give them head, like, everyone has different sensitivities. I'm sure there are some people who could listen to this and understand and say, yeah, I've had sensitivities, I've gotten headaches, or like when you already do have a headache, you know how bright lights can be really triggering. Or there are some individuals who are so sensitive, like this is a necessary accommodation for a lot of people, but it's so expensive. And so having something that is becoming more accessible and more common for in-homes, having this light that can be very easily adjusted. Because I've even got these filters over like windows at school that just help decrease. I mean, that's like a whole other thing, but like it's not, that's nice. And I like, again, and then also we have like lighting, but then the schools will refuse to actually install new lighting, so we have to have like lamps and stupid like colored lighting that way around the environment to help reduce the problematic lighting that is in schools. So that's really great that it's going to be possible for more homes, because there are, I mean, obviously these kids have homes too, and with parents, like because of our whole medical system being the way it is and so many people can't get the help they need, a lot of families don't have, well, even knowledge that they could benefit from having this. But the more common it is, the better it is. So I'm sorry for going off on a tangent, but that's exciting. I like it. I'm very excited about that, and I want colored lights for our house.
Next up is the adaptive lighting that they were showing off was like throughout the day, it will have more white, less blue light as the time goes on. You can set to whatever schedule you want to, but yeah, they have ways to make it so that if you want more focused kind of lighting versus more wind down kind of lighting, and
a whole range, it sounds like.
Yeah, a whole range. I just recently fixed somebody's smart lights at their place, and yeah, like you could just change whatever color you wanted to be, when you wanted to turn it on and off. And this was a very basic app of you could schedule it to turn on at a certain time, schedule it to turn off at a certain time, and set whatever light color that you want it to be.
And this, I know this is, right now we're talking Apple. This is something that has been...
Yeah, this is a thing that's been...
But it is exciting, and I'm glad that Apple is adding it too.
Face recognition camera and smart sensor. And they didn't really provide like who this camera was, unless I missed it. But they door cam that very much like Ring or anything else, and it will be able to utilize your Photos app, because your Photos app, between Apple and Google, they both are able to do face recognition and then filter photos based off of that face. Now, these cameras can access that information, so that if somebody comes to your door, it'll be able to be like, oh, this person's here at your door, because it can recognize the face.
That does sound cool, and we should have another discussion another day about facial recognition technology, Clearview, all of those things.
Then there's also a smart sensor where you can set up the field of where you want the camera to be looking at for motion, so that if you have a wide angle lens and it's able to see to the left and right, or even far enough away where it sees traffic, you don't want it utilizing the traffic as motion, so that you would be able to set like the perimeter, the zone that it sees that you want as face recognition, or to sense motion. Linking these to the TV on tvOS 14. That was the other one. Apple TV. And so that when somebody rings the doorbell, you can pop it up on your TV and see who's at the door. Or if you have cameras in the house, you can just tell the TV to switch to look at, the kid room camera or whatever, the nursery camera or something like that. They're also adding multi-user game support for the Apple TV. So if you play games like the phone games on the Apple TV, and you want to have multiple people playing, but they each want their own save, you can have different profiles so that everybody can play the game with different profile. Fitness apps on the TV. I can't remember what that was. Picture in picture in TV. Really.
But for
useful.
your phone too, right?
Picture in picture for the phone too.
You didn't mention which that looked like, because okay, I didn't realize that Apple didn't have picture in picture where you can make a video that you're watching on your screen smaller and then just do other things and keep watching it. So Apple's finally getting that, which is exciting, but it looks way better.
I had it at one point and then they took it away, and then now they brought it back, and now you can resize it on the phone to make it a bit bigger, a bit smaller, and also you can push it off to the side so that you don't see the visual, you still get the audio, and there's like a little nub that you can pull back so that when you want to see it again. So it really helps when you're multitasking, if you're like listening to something, watching something, let's say a podcast, and or like a YouTube podcast like us, and you like you're listening to it but reading,
and you don't want to see
and you don't necessarily need to see us on the screen, you can kind of push it off to the side.
And I liked that you can resize it too, because I know with my experience with the Android that we use currently, I like that you can make it smaller and it's down at the bottom of your screen about 1 inch by 1.5 inches. But I love that on Apple you can even resize it from there, so it's the width of your screen when it's in vertical, and then just, you know, drag it up or down wherever you want it, or make it even smaller. I really liked the upgrades that Apple did add to this picture in picture on your phone. Back to the home.
Apple TV Plus, they announced a new TV show called Foundation. Looked pretty cool. That's about it. It's like a sci-fi series.
It's so random.
Yeah, they just throw that in there, and so I also threw it in here.
Oh, okay.
Mac OS, Big Sur is their new Mac OS overhaul design, and it is mainly overhauling the design of how it looks. So they redid a lot of the symbols on the dock, and they made it a little bit more consistent with the apps on the phone and the apps on the iPad, and gave a lot more synchronization to the symbols. I know you don't like symbols, but making it a lot more straightforward. And less different between apps.
I don't know if that's like a good move or not. Like you said, I'm not big on the symbols. I think a lot of them are hard to tell already. And then when they're changing it, that is, I mean, hopefully they're changing it to be more intuitive, but I don't always agree that they do.
I don't know about more intuitive, but making it so that the same function uses the same symbol across apps, right? So very much like the sandwich or the hamburger, like that we come to know as the menu symbol. That's pretty consistent across apps. I had no idea what you were talking about.
You mean the 3 lines?
Yeah, the 3 lines.
I don't like that it's called hamburger and sandwich, and it's actually just 3 lines.
I've said 3 lines though before, and you also couldn't put that together.
Well, if you're out of context, but if you're talking about the visual representation on a phone and you say 3 lines, I know what 3 lines looks like. That's so much easier than any of the other names.
Also, they take up less room than words.
Yeah, and I do think that some of them that are pretty universal can be handy, but the changing them, and I don't know, some of it gets to be unnecessary to me.
They also talk about Safari, and that they are giving extensions, API. There's not really too much exciting about it unless you're a very big Safari user. Home tab editor, that is kind of cool when you open up to a new tab and you have a home tab and you can edit it to be whatever you want it to be. If you want stocks, or if you want your email or things like that to be the part of the home tab. Privacy report, tabs and page preview. So does Safari have tabs?
How would I know? I haven't used Safari in years, and
I
it
don't
was
know. You have a
minimal.
Mac.
I use Chrome.
Because if Safari didn't have tabs up until now,
There's no way I could have used it. You know how many tabs I have open on any given moment?
well, that's why I was asking you if it did have tabs or it didn't.
Don't know. I have not used that.
Because that's kind of crazy if it didn't have tabs. I don't like. But the page preview is kind of cool. Is if you do have lots of tabs that are taking over, and then when you hover over it, it gives like a mini preview of that page when you're hovering over the tab, which is pretty nice. So that instead of clicking on the page to see what's on the page, when you have so many tabs and you only get that little icon. Built-in transition. I don't know what that is. I don't remember. This has been about 4 days now. Then Tim Cook started talking about the new Mac upgrade. And this is them changing their processor unit to an Apple-made processor. And they talked about their Apple Silicon being able to scale better. Their custom CPU for Mac. They will be able to create the same architecture for phone, iPad, watch, and Mac all in one. So a lot of things will be able to be cross-compatible between all devices.
Once this
transition.
About a 2-year transition period.
So yeah, it's 2 year. Their 2-year transition period is I guess it's going to be years in which there's going to be Macs that have the Apple processor, Macs with the Intel processor, which they're currently using, and that they're going to still be pushing both those kind of Macs out until eventually after 2 years, it's just going to be the Apple processor. There's still going to be, I imagine, more of a transition period as to getting rid of all of the Intel Macs from circulation altogether, but that could be like a decade-long process.
Easily, at least.
They did make sure note that when they are doing this, that they have built-in programs, or they have programs for developers to be able to easily compute their programs to both the Apple architecture and the Intel architecture. Now, optimization might become iffy, where some things might work better on the Intel processor versus the Apple, and vice versa. That's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles when this transition stuff happens. They are using an old program called Rosetta that they used initially when they switched to Intel, that they remade for this process, right? So it's not really an old program, but they're calling it the same thing because it does the same function. You can compile old apps. So any apps that are currently built for the Intel, they have a compiler to rebuild for the new processor. And they said that after a few weeks, you should be able to get old apps into the new processor, but using this compiling. And yeah, it opens the opportunity to run iPhone apps and iPad apps on the Mac, which is just really good. On top of that, the CPUs, like the reason why Apple phones tend to last so long is because of how much control they have on their CPU. Since they're the ones that build it, they are able to understand from the ground up how much it's able to work with, and they are able to maximize the CPU to be fully efficient with the rest of the hardware and software. And being able to do that on Macs too, where you can get a Mac that doesn't heat up as fast because the CPU is designed to do exactly what the Mac is designed for is it makes it so that it takes longer to heat up. When it heats up, it might not heat up as fast, which means the cooler the CPU, the faster the CPU.
My MacBook gets really overheated all the time lately, and it's probably because we're doing distance learning and so much video and everything, but it's constantly like, it's so hot. So hopefully that helps reduce the hotness.
Yeah. And also the last note is the Apple campus looks ridiculously cool. They showed off a lot of the Apple campus and drone footage during this presentation. My goodness, that thing looks so cool. It's like a flying saucer just out in the middle of nowhere. That's about it, though. That is the Apple press conference. Hopefully there were things that you found interesting in it, and let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you think Google should steal, what you think Apple should take from Google, or vice versa, as to new innovations that they might be able to have. And if you are watching this on Anchor or any of the podcasts, be sure to subscribe. Same thing on YouTube, and we will see you next week. Have a great one, guys.
Take care.